the quiet and mysterious Highlands of northern Scotland, where cold winds swept endlessly across the open moors, life moved at a slower pace. Small villages, stone cottages, and a close-knit community where almost everyone knew their neighbors by name. It was considered a safe place, the kind of place where people could walk alone at night without fear. But one cold winter evening, something happened that would shake the entire village. This is the story of a young woman named Annie. Annie was known throughout the village as a responsible, calm, and dependable person. She was very close to her family, and everyone who knew her liked her. Those who knew Annie often said she would never leave without telling someone where she was going. And that is exactly what made the events that followed so difficult to understand. The weather that day had been bitterly cold. Dark gray clouds hung low over the hills, and by evening, darkness had already begun to settle across the countryside. Warm lights glowed from cottage windows, while smoke drifted from chimneys into the freezing air. Inside her family home, Annie spent the evening with her loved ones. Everything seemed completely normal. There were no arguments, no signs of trouble, nothing that suggested her life was about to change forever. At some point that evening, Annie decided to visit a nearby neighbor. It was a very short journey, only a few minutes on foot, a familiar route she had likely walked many times before. She put on her coat, adjusted her scarf, and stepped out into the cold evening air. No one thought much of it. After all, it was a routine trip, but no one knew it would be the last time Annie would ever be seen. At first, her delay did not seem unusual. People often lose track of time while talking with friends or neighbors. But slowly, more time passed. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, then an hour. And Annie still had not returned. Now her family began to worry. They stepped outside and called her name. They searched the road she was supposed to have taken. They checked nearby paths and surrounding areas, but there was no sign of Annie anywhere. As the night grew darker, fear began to replace hope. The silence that normally defined the village suddenly felt unsettling. By midnight, her family realized that something was terribly wrong. By the following morning, the entire village knew Annie was missing. Within hours, villagers, volunteers, and search teams began looking for her. Flashlights cut through the thick fog as searchers spread across the countryside. Open fields, hillsides, and lonely roads were searched again and again. But Annie could not be found. There were no witnesses, no clues, and no evidence explaining what had happened during that short walk. The road she should have traveled in just a few minutes had become the center of an unsolved mystery. Days passed, but the questions remained. What happened to Annie on that cold winter night? Did she somehow lose her way? Was she the victim of an accident? Or was someone else on that lonely road that evening? Even today, when people look at those fog-covered roads in the Scottish Highlands, one question still lingers. Where did Annie disappear to that night? And will the truth behind her disappearance ever be discovered? As news of Annie's disappearance spread through the village, concern quickly turned into urgency. The police were called, and a search began almost immediately. At first, investigators focused on the most obvious possibility. Perhaps Annie had simply lost her way. The weather had been cold, and the Highland landscape could be deceptive after dark. Thick mist often rolled across the roads and fields, reducing visibility to only a few meters. If she had taken a wrong turn or slipped somewhere nearby, there was still hope she could be found. Neighbors volunteered to help. Friends joined the effort. People who had known Annie all their lives left their homes and searched the countryside together. Local roads were checked first, then the fields, then the narrow footpaths connecting homes around the village. Search teams walked the same routes again and again, determined not to overlook even the smallest clue. But the landscape remained silent. There were no footprints, no dropped belongings, no sign that Annie had passed through. As the hours became days, police expanded their efforts. Search dogs were brought in to trace Annie's movements. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the investigation had finally found a lead. The dogs picked up her scent. Handlers followed carefully as the animals moved along the route Annie was believed to have taken. Everyone hoped they were getting closer to an answer. Then something strange happened. The scent stopped, abruptly, without explanation. One moment the dogs were following a clear trail. The next moment, there was nothing. To experienced investigators, that detail was deeply troubling. People do not simply vanish. A scent does not normally disappear without reason. The discovery raised difficult questions. Had Annie entered a vehicle? Had she met someone on the road? Had something happened in the short distance between her home and the neighbor's house? No one knew, and no evidence existed to provide a clear answer. Police began interviewing anyone who might have seen something unusual that evening. Residents were asked about vehicles, strangers, and sounds in the night. Some people thought they had seen a figure moving through the mist. Others believed they heard footsteps somewhere near the road. One resident remembered noticing movement in the distance, yet none of these memories could be confirmed. Every possible clue seemed to dissolve into uncertainty. Days passed, then weeks. Yet Annie remained missing. The search that had once filled the village with urgency and determination slowly transformed into something much heavier: uncertainty. Every sunrise brought fresh hope that a new clue might finally emerge, and every sunset ended with the same crushing disappointment. Police officers continued their investigation tirelessly, following every lead, no matter how small. Reports were reviewed again and again. Witnesses were questioned repeatedly. Search teams returned to locations they had already searched before. But nothing changed. No confirmed sightings, no personal belongings, no evidence that could explain what had happened to Annie. As the weeks passed, missing person posters carrying Annie's photograph appeared throughout the region. Her story spread from village to village. Public appeals were made. Investigators asked the same questions over and over. Had anyone seen Annie after she left home that night? Had anyone noticed a suspicious vehicle on the road? Had someone witnessed something unusual without realizing its importance? But the answers never came. For Annie's family, the waiting became unbearable. Every day began with hope. Every night ended with unanswered questions. Again and again, they replayed that evening in their minds. Every conversation, every detail, every moment before Annie walked out the door. Was there something they had overlooked? A small clue that seemed insignificant at the time? Something that could explain why Annie never came home? But no matter how deeply they searched their memories, they found nothing. The mystery remained exactly the same. As time passed, Annie's absence became impossible to ignore. An empty chair at the dinner table, a coat still hanging where she had left it, personal belongings untouched. Ordinary objects suddenly carried extraordinary meaning. Because when someone disappears without explanation, their absence is felt everywhere. Not only in the places they once occupied, but in the routines they leave behind. For the people who loved Annie, life could never return to normal. Every phone call sparked a brief moment of hope. Every unexpected knock at the door caused hearts to race. Perhaps this would be the day. Perhaps someone had finally discovered the truth. But the answers never arrived. The village carried the weight of the mystery as well. People spoke about Annie often, in local shops, at community gatherings, in quiet conversations between neighbors. Many remembered the night she vanished, the cold air, the darkness, the silence. Some believed that somewhere, someone knew more than they had ever revealed. Others wondered whether the remote Highlands themselves had hidden the truth forever. The road Annie had taken became a place remembered differently. In the early months, people walked it repeatedly, searching for clues. Years later, many avoided it entirely. Not because the road had changed, but because what happened there remained unknown. And sometimes, uncertainty is far more frightening than certainty. As months turned into years, Annie's disappearance became more than a missing person case. It became a mystery woven into the history of the village itself, a story passed from one generation to the next, a question nobody could answer. And despite every search, every interview,
every investigation. One painful fact remained unchanged. Annie was still gone, and no one knew why.
As months became years, the investigation continued in the background, but the answer everyone wanted remained out of reach. There were no confirmed arrests, no public conclusion, and no discovery that finally explained what happened on that cold winter evening. The mystery remained exactly where it had begun, on a short stretch of road between Annie's home and her neighbor's house. A familiar route, a familiar place, and what should have been an ordinary evening. Yet Annie vanished without leaving behind a clear trace. Over the years, many theories emerged. Some believed she may have encountered a stranger, someone passing through the area, someone who was never connected to the mystery.
But I
Others
can't let it
believed
go.
that somewhere within the harsh Highlands, nature itself had hidden the truth. The landscape was vast, the weather could be unforgiving, and time had a way of burying answers. There were also those who believed that everything depended on a small window of time, only a few hours. Yet perhaps everything that mattered happened within that brief span. But theories are not answers, and speculation cannot replace evidence. Without proof, every possibility
It
remained
really is
uncertain.
the perfect day for a
Annie's
hot cup
family,
of tea.
the passing
it
years
is that,
did not
and
bring
I'm glad
closure.
for the warmth.
They brought endurance, the difficult task of continuing life while carrying questions that never truly disappeared. Questions that returned again and again. Was Annie frightened? Did she try to call for help? Did someone see something
We have
important
been searching these
and never
hills for
realize
days,
it? Was there a clue hidden
but the
in plain
fog hides
sight all
its secrets
along?
well.
The questions remained, but the answers never came. That is one of the most painful realities of an unsolved disappearance. The search may end, the investigation may slow, but uncertainty remains alive. It survives in memories, in old conversations, and in quiet moments when people still ask, "Do you remember what happened to Annie?" Years after her disappearance, people still remembered, not because the mystery had been solved, but because it had not. Because human beings naturally seek endings. We want explanations. We want certainty. We want stories to make sense, but sometimes they do not. Sometimes a person leaves home on an ordinary evening and never returns. Sometimes a family spends years waiting for answers that never arrive. And sometimes a mystery remains exactly that, a mystery. Perhaps that is why Annie's story continues to stay with people, not because it was sensational, but because it felt impossible. A normal evening, a short walk, a familiar road, and then
That it is,
nothing.
Hamish.
No clear ending, no certainty, only silence.
Some cases are never
Silence
truly
that settled
closed.
over a village and never
They just
completely
wait for time to
disappeared.
pass.
And to this day,
Until
Annie's
the truth
disappearance
finally
remains
emerges.
A reminder that life can change in a single moment, that even the safest places can hold unanswered questions, and that sometimes the most frightening part of a mystery is not what we know, but what we never learn. On that winter night in the Highlands, Annie went out for a short visit and never came back, and the silence she left behind became a mystery the village has never forgotten.